Hello and welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be looking at data validation. So if you've seen one of our earlier videos, we use data validation to give us a drop-down list in Excel. And we'll put the link to that video on the screen now because in this video we will not be looking at lists. But obviously if you want to check that out, or if you're needing to put a list into your worksheet, you can check out that previous video and that'll give you everything you need to get started with lists. In this video, we're going to show you how you can use data validation to firstly police or enforce the values that are entered into a particular range of cells, and also some prompts that you can include when those values are either not inserted, so kind of like an error message, or guidance to tell people what they should be entering into that cell. We're going to look at three different aspects of this. So we're going to look at dates, numbers and text. They work in all the very same way, but we just want to cover them off just to show you the flexibility and the range that you have available to you. So the first thing we're going to do is look at dates, and you can see in column B, we've got a table, an empty table ready to be populated, and we've got a predefined range here of the 1st of the 1st 2019 until the 31st of March 2019. So that is going to be our range in which we only want people to enter dates that fall within that range. If it's a date in 2018, or if it's a date greater than the 31st of March 2019, we don't want them to be able to record that date in this table. And you could make up any different scenario of why you might want this criteria, but we've not really focused on a particular scenario. We're just focused on the actual solution that you can utilize if you have some date parameters to enforce your date values. So in order to do this, as you can see, we've got a table ready, so we know where this range of information needs to be. So we want to be in this range here from row 6 to row 11. Any dates entered into those rows in that range of column B can only fall within that date range of the 1st of January to the 31st of March. So what we need to do is highlight the whole range that we want to add the data validation to. We're then going to go to our date tab in the ribbon at the top of your screen, and then we're looking for the option for data validation. So it'll be towards the right hand side, and yours may look different on your screen depending on what version you are using. For us, we can see that data validation is identified here under data tools section, and for us it's got the logo of the tick and the cross to indicate the data validation, and you can see obviously when you hover over it, it tells you that it is data validation indeed. If you can do the drop down, and if you do the drop down, just go on to data validation, else just select the button and that will take you into the same screen. So we are looking at dates in this first one. So data validation criteria, we want to allow dates. So all we need to do in this allow drop down is identify where it says date. And once we've done that, we will then get some other options available to us. So we can check what data we want here. So we could either say a number one of scenarios, so these are the usual sort of between, not equal to, less than, greater than or equal to, and so there's a number of options we have in here. So we could put greater than or equal to, and that would reduce our options down to a single data entry point. So if we enter the start date in here, it would only allow dates within our defined range that are greater than or equal to this start date that we enter here. But for us, our scenario is going to be between two particular date ranges, so we can just select this default option of between. And then what we need to do here is enter in what those date parameters are. So for us, it's going to be the 1st, without a full stop, the 1st of the 1st, 2019, and our end date is going to be March 31st, 2019. So simply as that, that's all we need to enter into here to get started. So if we now select OK, it doesn't seem like much has been done, but that data validation has now been applied to our range. So if we were to go outside of that range and type a value of let's say December 31st, 2018, obviously we can enter that number or that date into any range outside of our defined range. But if we try and enter it within our range we've applied the validation to, so 12/31, 2018, you'll see we now receive an error message. So this value does not match the data validation restrictions defined for this cell. So it's going to give us this AIM error message at this moment in time for any date that we try to add to this range what does not comply with our date parameter range. So let's just do cancel there. Let's clear these two to tidy up. Let's do clear contents. And now let's enter a correct date. So if we do the first, so January 15th, 2019, you can see that that will be accepted. If we were to do, let's do a February 16th, 2019, again, that's great. If we were to do the 20th of March 2019, again, you can see it's great. So you're obviously getting the idea here, but obviously if we now go in and put into here April 1st, 2019, again, we're going to get that error message. So we've been able to enforce those dates that we want to be entered into that range. So the next part really is how can we customize this error message, or I guess one thing before that is we're going to look at how we can customize this error message you see on the screen now, but also how can we provide a prompt that will indicate to the user who's going to be entering this information what they should be inputting in the first place before they even get to this error message. So what we're going to do is just cancel this error message here, and then we'll just clear off this information so we'll start tidy again. So we'll reselect our information or our range as we've done here from rows 6 to 11, and we'll just go straight back into data validation again. And you can see when we go in there, it's already predefined for the validation that's applicable for that range at the moment in time. So this step we're now going to do, you could do this also at the same time as you first enter your validation, your date parameters, or you can come to it later as we're now doing. So as you'll see, we were previously using the settings tab. This time we're going to use one of the other tabs, what's going to be input message, and the third one we have is error alert. You can probably already guess what that's going to be. So what we want to do is do our input message. So show input message when cell is selected. So we can tick that if we want that to be applicable, or we can untick it if we don't want it to be applicable. By ticking the box, what will happen is when an individual clicks one of these cells within our range, it will present them with this message here. Obviously, if you were to untick it, then they would not receive any message at all. So what we'll do is we'll give it a title, and we'll say date range. Let's put enter date. And you might want to be something a bit more particular. So if there's a particular field, like the first thing that comes to mind was date of birth, then you might want to put title date of birth, just so it coincides with any column headers or fields that you are using. So the input message here is please enter a date that falls within our date parameters. Or let's get rid of the parameters. This is a date range. Just be consistent and make it a bit more easier. So simply put, our input message is going to say it's going to have a title of enter date, and our input message will say please enter a date that falls within our date range. So perfect and very straightforward. We'll then also do our error alert. So again, tick box, so show error alert after invalid data is entered, so you can either have it visible or not. Obviously, if you're going to be using error message or validation, I would strongly suggest using error alert. Input message is a nice thing to have, and I just feel it gives a nice round user experience so that they're informed of what they should be entering in the first place. But the error alert I find is very particularly important, because if someone's trying to enter information, particularly if they're maybe not an advanced user of Excel, having this error message customized to that field gives them a bit more information of what they're doing wrong and what they need to correct. So what we have once we're selected, if we want to have it visible or not, is we have style. So simply we've got default stop, and you can see it will give this icon of stop. If we choose warning, we'll get the little warning symbol, and the last one we have is information. So you can choose which one of those you want to be present on your pop-up. I personally always go for information, just because it's just not so dramatic and sort of bold as those other ones, and it's more informing rather than sort of telling someone they've done something wrong. So that's my personal preference, but whatever one you feel best suits. And again, we just need to do a title and an error message, similar to what we put for input message. So all we need to do is title, I'll put date range, and for the error message, I'll just put here, please ensure that you are entering the valid date within our range. Or obviously you can make that as detailed as needs be for your particular scenario. So once you've done that, we can just go back through, so we can see we've got settings, we've got a date validation between these two dates. We can see input message, we've got this selected, so they're going to get an input message when they select into the cell range. and then they'll get an error message if the date is entered incorrectly. Once you're happy, just click OK, and that information is done. And you would have just seen that pop-up quickly happen there, but I've just moved away just so we can work through the full explanation. So what will happen, again, nothing happens if you click on a cell around the parameter, but if you select one of the cells in our range, as soon as you do, the user will receive this pop-up. So enter date, please enter a date that falls within our date range. So if we were to do a valid date, so the 10th of Jan 2019, we can see it all works fine. And having pushed enter on that one, obviously it's gone to the next cell and it's going to give that same pop-up. If, however, we enter an invalid date, so let's do April 1st, 2019, you can see our error message has now changed. So rather than the one we are getting by default, we can see we now have our information icon. And we can see that our range is telling us that please ensure that you are entering a valid date within our range. And for reference, the title that we entered obviously is this information that you can see here in the blue top part of the pop-up. So as you can see, that gives a bit more rounded user experience, and it's a lot easier to navigate the user back now to tell them what they need to fix for it to be suitable. So push OK, and then what we can do is just now clear that, and that is pretty much data validation done for dates. So the other two we'll quickly go through is we won't look at the input and the error messages for these two, we'll just show you how to use them. So for numbers, we've got here a range of of 1 to 10. So what we can do here is enforce that only numbers entered here are 1 to 10. So if we want to do that, we just go back into our data validation, into our settings tab, and then this time for numbers we have a couple of options. We can either use whole numbers so they can't add decimal places, or if you want to include a decimal, then obviously you can go for decimal. But we're going to go for whole because we only want them to enter like 1, 2, 3 or 4, an actual integer and a whole number. And for this again we're going to do between, but as you know you have all these other options available to you if they are more applicable. So for our minimum we've got a number of 1 and our maximum is the number of 10. So having entered those we can do OK. And we can now see that when we go down into our cell, and let's just change the formatting away from date. You can see that if we enter any numbers within that range, it's fine. But as soon as we try and enter a number that is not, we're going to get that error message. And obviously you can now replay the steps in order to get a more tailored error message and input message. The last one we have here, again, we're quickly going through these now, is text. So we have the ability to limit the number of characters within text. This could be particularly useful if there is certain phrases, or if you just want people to capture maybe comments, but you want to limit it without getting pages and pages of information contained within a single cell. So in order to do this, and I'll just change the formatting again, once again we just go back to our data tab, find data validation, and this time in our allow drop down we can select a text length. And this time we'll say it's got to be less than or equal to 5. So they can only add up to 5 characters. So this time if we want to now enter, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a really boring way, you could obviously put an actual word here rather than numbers, but this is just an easy way to demonstrate. You can see that's going to be fine. If you wanted to add only 3 characters, also fine. But if we now wanted to try and add 6 characters, we're obviously going to get our error message, and that won't be accepted. So we hope you found that video very useful. Sorry we sort of rushed through at the end there, but it's just to make sure that we weren't really repeating ourselves too much, and obviously before the video became too long. But as you hopefully understood, that the validation to apply for your numbers and text are very much the same as your date parameters. So it's just basically retracing those steps we first looked at and applying the conditions that you require. Data validation obviously is a great tool, especially if you've got other people going into an Excel file to populate information, or you're kind of doing maybe a survey style where you have to send something out to have someone populate the information that they know. So we hope you found that very useful and you can start applying that to your work now. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. Make sure to hit that bell notification button so you are notified as soon as our new videos come out. Links to our social platforms of Instagram, Facebook and our website are found in the description for this video. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to us either by one of our social pages or drop us a comment below this video and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you very much and we'll see you in the next video.